When it comes to our air, there are no boundaries. That's why efforts to improve air quality transcend borders and various levels of government. Today, we'll see how communities in BC and Washington State are making a positive difference. Coming up, Making a Difference, Air Quality and Your Health.
Deep breath. Keep on going. Blow, 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 blow. Good.
Every year, 12-year-old Jordan Petty gets his lungs checked. Jordan has asthma, and airborne irritants like pollen, dust, and particulate matter make it difficult to breathe properly.
Deep breath and blow.
When I was younger, I remember waking up and having to go outside and get the fresh air into me. And my mom told me when I was younger I had to go to emergency a lot of times.
Air pollution is not just an irritant, it's a killer. In BC, outdoor air pollution contributes to the death of as many as 250 people a year. Another 700 people are admitted to hospitals because it's difficult to breathe. Next door in Washington State, 80 to 100 people die of asthma alone. Close to 5,500 are hospitalized. Residents of the Georgia Basin Puget Sound region share a common airshed encompassing major urban areas such as Greater Seattle and Greater Vancouver. Wind flow patterns move pollutants across our border in both directions. It's not just what we drive, but how we drive as well. Vehicle idling is a major contributor of greenhouse gases and toxic chemicals to our environment. Simply turning off your car if you're waiting longer than 10 seconds can have a major impact on our air quality, as well as your gas bill. Sometimes you can see visible pollution in the air. Because we can see it, we understand that this type of pollution is bad for us. But it's what you can't see that causes the most harm. In the cities, transportation accounts for the majority of all air pollution. As our population grows, so too does the number of cars in our region, reducing the benefit of low-emission engines. In addition to cars, some of the highest emissions come from the smallest engines, especially the two-stroke gasoline engines found in things like older lawnmowers and leaf blowers. An older-style lawnmower running for an hour can emit as many pollutants as a new car traveling 550 kilometers, or about 340 miles. The other half of pollution caused by fossil fuel emissions comes from diesel trucks, buses, and the construction industry. BC and Washington State are major ports, and ships running on heavy bunker fuel are prime polluters. Fleets of diesel-powered trucks waiting by dockside make the problem worse.
The typical diesel engine has a 15 to 20-year life, so it's going to take a while to replace those fleets with these cleaner burning and inherently cleaner engines. And until that happens, we're going to have that pollution around.
While heavy traffic is a major pollution source in and around cities, in rural areas, smoke is a major concern. Smoke comes from wood stoves, backyard burning, and land clearing operations.
I've had asthma all my life, and I have never smoked. A lot of people on this oxygen you find are ex-smokers, but I have never smoked. It's entirely due to a lifetime of asthma, and more than anything, I have to have clean air to breathe.
David Holmes Smith and his wife Rosemary moved from the Okanagan to BC's Sunshine Coast in 1997 to be close to the sea air. Unfortunately, shortly after they moved in, they found that the neighborhood wasn't as clean as they thought it would be.
The neighbors had a wood stove. Come November, there was a lot of smoke. And we also had a lot of the gravel trucks going past us. We were on the route towards a building site for the new school, so we had the traffic fumes as well as the wood smoke.
So Rosemary and her husband formed the Sunshine Coast Clean Air Society to educate their neighbors about the health hazards of air pollution in general and smoke inhalation in particular. Rosemary's condition is aggravated by particulate matter, a byproduct of wood smoke and backyard burning and land clearing operations in the countryside and tailpipe emissions in the city. Particulates are fine solids that hang in the air for days. Along with nitrogen dioxide, they color the haze we associate with air pollution. They also carry toxins such as benzene found in gasoline and other sources. Particulates can measure from less than 10 microns in diameter, and that makes them dangerous because we can breathe them in easily.
The larger particles come from mainly resuspended dusts and mechanical activities. When you get down to smaller sizes, they're mainly due to combustion products or to condensation and smog reactions in the atmosphere.
Larger particulates are called PM10. That's the size of pollen and dust. Very small particulates less than 2.5 microns in size are called PM2.5 and are even more dangerous because they are small enough to penetrate into the deepest part of the lung.
The larger particles, equal to or greater than 10 microns, are filtered out more readily by your nose and to some extent by your mouth. But the smaller particles go in and penetrate more deeply in both cases.
Technological innovations like hybrid cars and low-emission engines are making a difference. The entire West Coast maritime industry from Tacoma to Vancouver is addressing the issue of diesel pollution. The Port of Seattle is converting its smaller vehicles to run on biodiesel. Its container handling machines, including these huge carriers, run on low-sulfur fuels. And rather than run their diesel engines while tied up at port, cruise ships in Seattle can plug into an onshore electrical grid. Rosemary and David are aware of these technological breakthroughs, but they know technology alone can't clean up the environment. It takes personal commitment.
For many years I have been worried about children getting asthma. I think it's a help to me too to have something to contribute, and if I can do that, that is something worthwhile that I take away feeling better because I've done this.
Jordan's an avid cyclist. He plays soccer and baseball. He's as active as other kids his age, maybe even more so. But he has to take precautions. After all, he has asthma.
Sometimes I don't let it affect me because you can't live your life like that. You gotta do what you want to do.
Jordan may want to lead a normal life, but the fact of the matter is he can't go anywhere without his 2 inhalers.
I have an orange one and I have a blue one. One calms me down right when I'm having an asthma attack. And the other one, it prevents from having an asthma attack, so it controls it a little more.
I'm very much aware of Jordan's asthma and the importance of keeping it under control because Jordy also has a life-threatening allergy. And if his asthma is not well controlled, then that is very, very dangerous for him. Yes, life or death.
For most of us, the nose is the body's first line of defense against air pollution.
When we breathe in air pollutants, our body actually has a series of natural mechanisms to protect ourselves. And they include some hairs that will clean out like little sweepers, mucus that can trap some of these pollutants, and together they try to clean the pollutants out of the body.
But really fine particulates, ozone and other contaminants can sneak past the body's defenses and penetrate deep into the lungs.
When we breathe in those pollutants, 2 things actually happen. One is that some people who already have breathing problems like asthma, or more importantly, elderly people that may have reduced lung capacity can have their breathing made much worse.
I get wheezy and I do a lot of coughing, stuff like that. It kind of hurts my throat a little.
The second real problem, and one that doesn't get as much attention, is these particulate matter can actually cause a reaction in the body that for whatever reason leads to heart problems and may lead either to sudden death or more heart problems themselves.
In fact, air pollution accounts for as many heart problems as lung problems.
We tend to look to vulnerable populations, older populations, those that have pre-existing heart or lung problems, and also the very young, as the most likely populations that are going to develop problems from air pollution.
With babies and toddlers, their lungs aren't fully developed yet. It's felt that if you stunt the development of those lungs, the child will find it harder to breathe normally later in life. Jordan was 2 when his symptoms materialized.
One time we were heading over to Victoria on the ferry, and he had a terrible reaction to all the pollution from the cars, and we ended up getting a special pass so that we wouldn't have to wait in the lineup on the way back, because it certainly did affect his breathing.
Jordan has determined that his medical condition isn't going to slow him down. He loves mountain biking. There's a race coming up later in the day, and even though it can tire him out, he throws himself into strenuous activity.
Uphill, that's one of my favorites. I do get a little wheezy sometimes at the top.
Asthmatics aren't the only people affected by bad air. Just because we're no longer sneezing or rubbing our eyes doesn't mean we're immune from its effects. Pollution has a cumulative effect on everybody.
Unhealthy people are more likely to feel the consequences of air pollution, but on a really bad day, even a healthy person may find that they're having more trouble breathing.
Poor air affects not only our health, but our pocketbook too. Poor air can negatively impact tourism and can mean stunted crops and a depressed agricultural economy. Hospital visits as a result of poor air quality cost the provincial healthcare system $85 million a year. In Washington state, adult and child asthma associated with poor air quality costs the healthcare system more than $75 million a year. And there's an added cost: the emotional strain on victims and their families.
For the most part, I don't let it bother me, but occasionally there is fear and worry about how it will affect him. The fact that he has asthma and life-threatening allergy, and how those two are not good in combination.
Let's go, Jordy, go hard!
I'm somewhat apprehensive about it, but have always really encouraged Jordan to be responsible and to educate others and to enjoy life.
Attaboy, Jordy! Good job!
Welcome to this meeting, and our topic, as always, is smoke, of which there's still too much.
Since moving to BC's Sunshine Coast and establishing their Clean Air Society in 1999, David and Rosemary Holmes Smith have engineered some positive changes.
Gibson's was the first. They changed the bylaw and banned backyard burning, and almost a year later, Sechelt followed. But we had to sort of push a little bit.
The town of Gibsons has even built a drop-off station for yard waste. Residents can drop off debris that is gathered, mulched, and chipped instead of burned. The Smith Initiative is one of approximately 500 community-based organizations throughout Washington and British Columbia. Community groups play a large and important role in improving our air quality.
Local government is the first line of attack in a way by, people in the community if they feel there is an issue to do with air quality.
Everyone has a role to play. Governments establish guidelines and gather data, like monitoring air quality. Monitoring stations covering both sides of the border are jointly funded by federal, state, provincial, and regional governments. BC's Ministry of Environment and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency post air quality indexes. These indexes help residents plan their activities according to local pollution levels. The higher the number, the greater the health risk. BC's Air Quality and Health Index is a communications tool designed to help you understand what air quality conditions in your area mean to your health. The Air Quality and Health Index suggests actions to help you protect yourself and plan your outdoor activities depending on your individual health risk. This lets individual communities on both sides of the border know where their pollution is coming from and in what quantity. Here at the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, analysts use data from their air monitoring stations to paint a picture of a community's environmental footprint. This information is also available online.
In Darrington's case, the particulate matter is probably composed of 95% wood smoke. What I've got on the screen is the levels based on the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA's Air Quality Index. If you're in the green, the air quality is supposed to be pretty good. Once you get into the yellow, it's considered moderate, and the higher you go, you notice it says unhealthy.
Governments gather information. Community organizations disperse it and use it to push for change. In Northwest Canada and the United States, old-fashioned wood stoves are a contentious issue. It's particularly acute in northern BC communities, as well as here in Darrington, Washington, a small lumber milling community nestled in the Cascade Mountains. Residents have been burning wood for decades. It's cheap, plentiful, and part of the local culture.
Stoves like this were built pre-1992, and that means that they're built without any afterburn or any other device in this stove to reduce your fine particle emissions and reduce smoke. We're all aware of secondhand smoke in cigarettes. Wood smoke carries some of those same chemicals that cigarettes do.
Dan Rankin runs a custom mill and serves as a local councilman. A committed conservationist, he's trying to get his fellow residents to exchange or change out their old stoves for newer propane or pellet burning devices. He even destroys the old stoves that are turned in. It's a co-venture between Darrington City Hall and the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. The agency administers rebate incentives ranging from $2,500 for propane or electricity to $500 for a newer certified wood stove. Similar incentives are offered in other parts of the state as well.
I love to walk, and I could literally walk in the evenings and see and smell, and I was affected by that. I knew it was the right choice for me. I just had to, get up the gumption and get the paperwork taken care of, but I finally did. I am a complete convert, no doubt about it. I'm the one out on the streets going, really, you should do this.
It's noticeable. The attitude and the burning practices that people have had since we've started our program have made our air much cleaner than it was 3 years ago.
A year after it started, the town of Darrington had cut particulate matter by 6 tons per year.
We're making a lot of headway on cleaning up the air on those particular days.
The Ministry of Environment runs similar change-out programs throughout rural British Columbia. In the Skeena region of northern BC, the Ministry of Environment is piloting a similar exchange program in partnership with municipalities, local retailers, and manufacturers. Several communities have even passed bylaws that will require the removal of old stoves when the property is sold, or by 2010, whichever comes first. Community-based programs like these are motivators. They get people thinking about what they can do on their own, such as replacing an old wood stove with cleaner burning technology, cycling or walking to their destination, or trading in the gasoline lawnmower with an electric or push model. And car-sharing cooperatives on both sides of the border are helping reduce the number of vehicles on our roads. Healthy communities are those where people can shop locally, where there's good public transit, and where there's the proper mix of business and housing. Non-profit advocacy groups like Smart Growth BC spread the sustainability message far and wide. Its message impacts the air we breathe.
Usually Smart Growth BC gets invited to a community to talk about how land development and how land use planning happens. We really encourage development to be well planned and compact so that people have a choice of being able to walk or bike or take transit to where they need to go and don't need to use their car.
The message is the same wherever they go. Planning smartly to control growth and minimize traffic creates healthy, livable communities.
We can't just leave it up to our elected officials and local government staff to plan the communities without public input. We all need to be engaged in creating a vision and a plan for the community.
Information leads to consensus, and consensus leads to action. Community-based groups are crucial in the battle against air pollution and improving air quality. Whether the message is controlled growth, taking public transit, or composting instead of burning, local initiatives can add up to real change. Community organizations can bring political pressure to bear on governments, and there are many guides and resources available to help get them started. Canadian West Coast environmental law is BC's legal champion for the environment. In September 2006, it published the Clean Air Bylaw Guide.
One of the real needs that was identified was the need to have a resource, a book that brought this all together, all the information together into one place. So that's really what we were trying to do on the issue of what local governments can do through their bylaw powers.
The guide grew out of a realization that municipalities are not always aware of their own powers.
It's difficult for municipalities to always understand fully all the tools that are available to them. So in the course of my conversation, for example, with one municipal official, he was quite surprised. He was welcoming of the guide and was very surprised to find out that municipalities had the jurisdiction to address air quality issues. He thought predominantly it was a provincial issue.
Air agencies run monitoring stations throughout the Georgia Basin Puget Sound region. Like this station in Darrington, Washington.
Well, this is the PM2.5 filter sampler, and I'm exchanging filters in the sampler.
This station monitors the amount of particulates in the Darrington air.
That information is then fed through a connection to our data logging system. That information then goes into a database back in our home office in Seattle.
It's rare that we see concentrations this high in the Puget Sound area. Darrington is a mountain valley. When we have stable air, meaning there's an inversion and the air doesn't move, wood smoke doesn't take long for it to pollute the air.
The data the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency collects is used to develop policy guidelines. These guidelines help planners, elected officials, and other decision makers design air and climate-friendly communities.
A lot of the work that we're doing is characterizing the air pollution that's in our community and then analyzing it to see what the sources are and then determining what the strategies are that are going to be most effective.
Some of the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency's policy suggestions include discouraging wood burning in densely populated areas, avoiding incompatible land uses, and limiting people's exposure to air pollution through the planning and zoning decisions they make.
Every community is different, and every community has different needs and a different situation. So rather than us coming in with a pre-planned template for action, the first step for us is to learn about that community and work with community leaders and really try and understand what will work in that community as opposed to having preconceptions about how to approach it.
Municipalities, as it turns out, have a lot of power. Here in Mill Creek, north of Seattle, city officials have imposed several policies aimed at making sure people have cleaner air to breathe. One of its first decisions dealt with the issue of wood smoke.
We believe that having wood-burning stoves and wood-burning fireplaces in a residential community is not in the best interest of the community at large. And that's what we're planning for as people. And our charge under the state constitution is to ensure that we protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the population. And we're interpreting that in terms of air quality to have a prohibition on wood stoves. Municipalities have the power to change elements of the environment. You have the responsibility to do what you can to ensure that as the community matures, that it matures in an environmentally responsible way. And that's a responsibility that I think land use planners take very, very seriously.
Municipalities can also lead by example. 6 BC municipalities are using biodiesel fuel in their vehicle fleets over the next 5 years, as are many in Washington. They can adopt eco-friendly procurement policies, purchasing goods that will minimize air emissions such as recovered and recycled building materials, bio-based oils and solvents, inks, and coatings. And ultimately, Canadian municipalities can pass legally binding bylaws. Vancouver, for instance, has an anti-idling bylaw. Residents are fined $50 if they leave their vehicles idling for more than 3 minutes. Kelowna prohibits backyard burning within its city limits. So do Gibsons and Sechelt, a result, as we have seen, of community pressure on local government.
We found there were a lot of people on our side, and as soon as you have some strength in numbers, that helped enormously.
But the movement is slow. I mean, we're not going to sort of say that our actions have actually translated into huge successes. We have 2 major successes, but we're still fighting the same old battle.
Local government is often the first line of attack because it gets other governments involved. Kelowna Mayor Sharon Shepherd chairs a multi-level advisory board that determines policy for the entire Okanagan Valley.
Well, it's been recognized that the air quality boundaries are way beyond our own boundaries.
Why couldn't there be a bylaw that says you use a vacuum instead of a blower to reduce the dust and improve air quality?
Although its nucleus consists of elected officials and representatives of various ministries, the policies it develops are a result of public input and town hall meetings.
Smoke was the number one issue, and from burning, from backyard burning, from forestry burning, agriculture burning. Transportation was the next issue. We have been allocated gas tax money, and with that money comes the opportunity to put it towards something green. And we've all agreed that transit is where we should be investing the money.
Local initiatives such as this work.
We've learned that the establishment of local committees that can bring together a variety of different stakeholders around the same table to sort of say, what can we do to improve our air quality, results in improvements in air quality.
Collectively and individually, we are making progress. Our vehicles are cleaner, we're using more public transit, and there are limitations on backyard burning. But there is still work to be done.
The responsibility for improving air quality rests with all of us. Now that can be on an individual basis about doing what we can to reduce our vehicle use, use public transport, bicycles, whatever that we can do to reduce contribution to the air.
We now realize that individuals are playing an increasingly important role, and this poses greater challenges to cleaning up the air. It's not quite so simple as knocking on the industry's door and filing a petition or a suit. Everybody's responsible.
Whether we're Canadians or Americans, we live in an airshed, and we all have a responsibility to ensure that we can breathe the cleanest air possible. You know, the devil's in the detail, and it's the little things that will have an outcome to be very positive in the future.